The night was a cathedral of frost and silence. Sir Aldrich Varen stood upon the parapet of Kale-Reach Spire, his breath rising in thin white threads against the silver face of the moon. The forest below slept beneath a shroud of mist, its dark limbs unmoving, its rivers frozen into glass. For years, Aldrich had watched this frontier alone, listening to the heartbeat of the wilderness and the crackle of his dying fire. But at the hour when the moon crossed the zenith, when even wolves dared not cry, the stillness broke. From the depths of the valley came a sound no living man had heard in an age, a deep, mournful horn that rolled through the mountains like thunder swallowed by the earth. The stones beneath his feet trembled. Ravens fled into the fog. Aldrich's heart stopped. The morning call had sounded, and no hand had touched it. Inside the tower, the silence afterward was worse than the horn itself. Aldrich descended the narrow stair, torchlight shivering across the walls. The air felt thicker now, heavy with dust and memory. He passed the rack where the horn rested, untouched, and knelt before it, listening. The runes along its surface pulsed faintly, like the heartbeat of something buried alive. He whispered to the emptiness, "Who calls upon you now?" But the only answer came from the wind pressing against the shutters, moaning like distant voices trying to speak. He climbed again to the tower's peak and peered into the valley. The mists had shifted. Strange lights shimmered among the trees, soft, greenish hues like lanterns moving in silence. Aldrich reached for his spyglass, its brass chilled to his touch. Through the lens he saw not torches, but faintly glowing figures gliding between the trunks, too tall, too slender to be men. His throat tightened. "The forest wakes," he murmured. He turned to the logbook, hands shaking as he inked the words. At the second hour past midnight, the morning call sounded. "Origin unknown," the quill scratched unevenly. Beneath it, the page trembled as a faint vibration passed through the desk. Another pulse from deep within the stone. The tower itself seemed to breathe. Aldrich looked toward the stairwell, where darkness pooled like oil. He drew his sword, its steel whispering as if reluctant to wake. The horn's echo faded into the distance, yet its memory lingered like smoke in his lungs. He stepped outside, the frost crunching beneath his boots. The moon sank lower, bleeding pale light through the clouds. Far across the valley, a wolf howled, a sound that should have comforted him but didn't. The cry seemed wrong, stretched, human. Aldrich's hand tightened on his sword, hilt, as he whispered to the dark. "Something has crossed the boundary." Dawn broke pale and hesitant. Mist coiled low across the valley, draping the forest like a burial shroud. Sir Aldrich descended from Kale-Reach Spire and crossed the frost-hardened path toward the tree line. Each step cracked the silence. The horn had not sounded again, but the earth bore its memory. Splintered branches, blackened snow, and a strange pattern of footprints circling the tower's base. They were long, narrow, and pressed deep, as though belonging to something heavy, but half-walking, half-dragging itself. Aldrich crouched and touched one print. The frost hissed beneath his glove, melting into steam. A warmth rose from it that no natural thing should possess. He straightened, drawing his sword as the fog thickened. From somewhere beyond the pines came a voice, soft, almost human. "Watcher." A figure emerged between the trunks. Lissa, the wandering herbalist. Her cloak of moss-green wool clung with dew, and her braid, dark and tangled, dripped with mist. She looked pale, exhausted, her eyes wide with knowing fear. "I heard it too," she whispered. The morning call. Aldrich kept his sword steady. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Not today." Lissa stepped closer, her breath quickening. "The forest warned me. The forest warned me. The old roots stir." Something beneath the spire remembers. Her words were strange, half prayer, half confession. They returned to the tower together, silence heavy between them. Inside, Lissa ran her fingers along the horn's carved surface, tracing the glowing runes. "It should never sound without blood," she said softly. Aldrich frowned. "Blood?" She nodded. "It was sealed by vow. One life bound to its silence. Break that vow, and the mountain remembers what sleeps beneath." Aldrich's jaw tightened. Then someone broke it. Lissa's eyes lifted to his, haunted, or something. "Name is your shortchi, turn she aside guestchi. Or old guard rastas trail." Outside, the day grew restless. The forest swayed, though no wind passed, and crows gathered on the battlements, their cries sharp and nervous. Aldrich climbed to the parapet once more. Gazing across the valley, from the far ridge, he saw movement, dark shapes shifting through the mist. Dozens, maybe hundreds. At first, he thought them soldiers, but their gait was wrong. Too uneven, too silent. He lowered his spyglass. "Lissa," he called, voice tight. "We're not alone." As twilight fell, Lissa gathered herbs by the hearth, grinding them into a paste that smelled of iron and pine. "For protection," she murmured, marking sigils on the floor with trembling fingers. Aldrich cleaned his blade, each stroke methodical, his mind fixed on the ridge. "If they come, the tower will hold," he said. Lissa's voice was barely a whisper. "The tower cannot hold against the dead." The fire crackled. Outside, the first flakes of snow began to fall. Soft, slow, and utterly silent. By dawn's pale haze, hoofbeats broke the silence. Captain Talon Morick arrived at Kalereach Spire with 4 men, their armor rimed with frost, banners stiff from the cold. The captain dismounted slowly, his face drawn and shadowed by years of sleepless command. "You sent no messenger," he said to Aldrich. Yet the garrison felt the tremor when the horn was sounded. Aldrich bowed slightly, eyes weary. "No man here touched it, Captain. It called on its own." Thalin's gaze turned toward the tower's interior, where Lissa stood watching from the shadows. "Then the legends are true," he muttered, "and our sins have found us." His words fell heavy as stone. Within the tower, Thalin's gauntlet brushed the horn's surface. The glow beneath its runes pulsed faintly, almost in recognition. "This relic was sealed under royal decree," he said. "None were meant to guard it alone." Aldrich frowned. "It was my penance." Thalin's eyes flicked to him with pity. "Penance? Or preparation?" He turned toward Lissa. "The horn stirs healer. What do your forest gods demand?" Lissa's tone was sharp. "Not gods, memories. The earth remembers what men bury." Her gaze met his unflinching, and it is angry. By midday, Thalin ordered his men to inspect the foundations. Beneath the tower's lowest level lay a sealed stone hatch carved with ancient sigils. The soldiers strained to pry it open, iron crowbars shrieking against the rock. It's fused shut. One grunted. Lissa stepped forward, tracing a rune with her palm. "This seal was not forged by men," she whispered. As she spoke, the sigil flickered to life, golden light rippling outward like a heartbeat. A deep, slow rumble rose from the earth. "Stop!" Aldrich shouted, but too late. The hatch cracked, and warm air surged upward, carrying the scent of ash and something older. The seal split with a thunderous crack. Heat washed through the chamber. Beneath the shattered stones lay a spiral staircase descending into darkness. Thalin motioned to his men. "Torches, we go down." "Whatever lies beneath was meant to sleep, and now it wakes," Thalin replied grimly. They descended in single file, their torches painting the walls in trembling light. Carvings of serpents, roots, and crowned skulls wound around them, ancient and deliberate. The air grew thick, each breath heavy with dust and old magic. At the stair's end, they entered a vast subterranean vault. Pillars of obsidian rose like petrified trees, supporting a ceiling lost in shadow. In the center lay a sarcophagus bound in chains. The lid bore the same runes as the horn. Talon stepped closer, awe softening his grizzled voice. "The first warden," he whispered, "the one who sounded it last." Lissa descended silently after them, eyes glimmering in torchlight. "Not sounded," she said. "Sealed. He gave his life to keep what's beneath from rising." Aldrich's torch flickered violently, casting the shadows of the chains against the walls. They were moving. Night fell again before they dared ascend. The tower moaned as if remembering what had been disturbed below. Outside, the wind rose into a low, steady howl. Unnatural, hollow, rhythmic. Lissa stood at the parapet, eyes fixed on the forest. Between the trees, faint glimmers of green light drifted like souls unmoored. Aldrich joined her, cloak flapping in the gale. "The forest moves," she murmured. He followed her gaze. Entire groves swayed though the air was still, their roots sliding like serpents through the soil. Thalon emerged behind them, gauntleted hands gripping the battlement. "We have woken it," he said. "Now it comes to judge us." The first tremor struck just before midnight. The tower's torches flared blue, their flames bending inward as if pulled by unseen breath. Aldrich rushed to the lower chamber, where the horn sat trembling on its rack. Its runes blazed, white-hot now, light spilling like molten glass across the stone floor. "It calls again," he whispered. Talon drew his sword. "Then answer it." But Lissa's voice, sharp and afraid, broke through. "If you sound it, the forest won't come. It will rise." Outside, the valley roared. Trees cracked like thunder, roots tearing through earth as something vast stirred beneath. Aldrich and Thalon ran to the gate. What they saw froze them, the forest itself advancing, a tide of trees moving as one. Trunks bowed, branches writhed, and within the mist, pale figures walked, tall, skeletal shapes woven from bark and bone, eyes burning green. "The Guardians," Lissa whispered from behind them, voice breaking. "The first spirits of the land, forgotten, betrayed." The tower's bell began to ring, though no one touched it. Thalen rallied his men along the battlements. Arrows were nocked, oil prepared, fire set to the cauldrons. "They bleed sap and shadow," he said grimly. "Aim for their eyes." Aldrich glanced at Lissa, who stood whispering to the wind, her palms pressed to the stone. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Listening," she said. "They're not coming to kill us. They're coming to reclaim what we stole." A deafening crack split the air as the first of the walking trees struck the gate, splinters flying like knives. "Then we have stolen too much," Aldrich muttered, drawing his sword. The siege began in earnest. Roots as thick as arms coiled around the tower's base, cracking stone, dragging the structure downward. Aldrich fought along the rampart, blade cleaving through tendrils that screamed like dying beasts. Below, Thalen's men burned what they could, but for every tree they felled, 2 more rose from the fog. Amid the chaos, Lissa collapsed, clutching her head. "It's calling me," she gasped. "The horn. It wants a voice." Aldrich rushed to her side, his armor streaked with sap and blood. Outside, thunder rolled like the growl of a waking god. The night became a storm of sound and fury. Rain lashed the spire, and the air shook with the groaning of roots against stone. Flames guttered along the parapets, dying as fast as they were lit. Aldrich dragged Lissa to the hearth inside, where she lay trembling, eyes wide with visions unseen. "The horn," she whispered. "It calls for its keeper." "Outside," Thalon shouted orders, voice drowned by the thunder of the advancing trees. Aldrich rose, sword drawn, gaze flicking between her and the horn. "If it calls for a keeper," he murmured, Then perhaps it will stop when it finds one. Lissa grabbed his wrist. If you answer it, you'll never return. He met her eyes, resolute. Then I will not leave it unanswered. Thalen's men fought like ghosts against the tide. Arrows struck but found no hearts. Axes bit wood that bled only smoke. One soldier screamed as a root tore him from the wall, vanishing into the mist below. Thalen stood unmoving, rain soaking through his furs, his sword burning with pitch. "Hold," he roared, though the words sounded small beneath the forest's roar. When Aldrich appeared beside him, Thalen did not turn. "You intend to blow it, don't you?" Aldrich nodded once. "Better by my breath than theirs." Thalen's jaw clenched. "Then may the gods have mercy, because the horn will not." Inside the spire, Aldrich approached the horn. The light from its runes dimmed, as if recognizing him. Lissa struggled to her feet, her voice cracking. "It doesn't want war. It wants remembrance." Aldrich paused, brow furrowing. "Then tell me how to remember." She touched the horn, her fingers trembling. "With truth, with blood freely given, not taken." Aldrich looked down at his hands, scarred and calloused. "Then it will have both." He drew his dagger, pressing the blade to his palm. As his blood struck the horn, it sang, a low, mournful note that shook the stones. Outside, the world convulsed. The forest froze, mid-movement, roots halting, branches trembling. A sound like the breath of the mountain filled the air, a resonance older than language. Thalen looked skyward as the clouds split open, revealing not moonlight, but a burning aurora that rippled across the heavens. "By the gods," he whispered. From the earth, spectral figures rose among the trees, soldiers of ages past, their armor grown over with moss, their faces hidden behind bark. They moved toward the tower, not to attack, but to kneel. The horn's cry faded into a trembling silence. Aldrich staggered back, blood dripping from his hand, breath ragged. Lissa caught him before he fell. "You answered," she whispered. "Now it remembers you." The tower shuddered, cracks racing along the walls. Thalen burst through the doorway, eyes wide. "Whatever you did, it's not done." The floor beneath them glowed with shifting runes. Lissa's gaze turned to the stone. "It's opening the gate," she said. Aldrich turned toward the crypt stairs below, his face pale but determined. "Then I will see what waits beyond it." Aldrich descended the cracked stair, torch in one hand, sword in the other, the horn's echo still ringing in his blood. The air below was thick as tar, pulsing with warmth and the scent of iron. Each step led him deeper into the wound beneath Kalereach Spire, a place older than kingdoms, built by hands that had no flesh. Above, faintly, Lissa's voice carried, calling his name. He didn't answer. He reached the bottom and entered the vault once more. The sarcophagus stood open now, chains slack, its runes weeping pale light. Inside lay no corpse, only a hollow impression of where a man had once rested. The walls breathed. From the darkness beyond the pillars, something moved, slow and deliberate. A whisper arose, ancient and terrible. "You have answered." A figure emerged from the gloom, the spectral outline of a knight in tattered armor, helm cracked, chest hollow, where a heart should be. His eyes burned with the same light as the horn. "I am what was bound," it said, voice echoing in stone. Aldrich raised his blade. "Then you are the first warden." The apparition inclined its head. "I was, until the horn forgot my name. You have awakened its grief." Aldrich's hand trembled. "How do I end this?" The spirit's voice deepened, reverberating through the vault. "You cannot end remembrance. You can only join it." Above them, thunder cracked as if the sky itself split. The tower groaned under its own weight. Lissa and Thalen reached the lower stair, torches flaring against the darkness. "Aldrich," she called. The spectral knight turned toward her voice, and the torches dimmed. "She bears the mark. it said softly. Lissa stepped into view, eyes shining. My blood remembers you, she said. The old pact bound through my line. The spirit bowed slightly. Then, it is your turn to seal it. Aldrich moved to block her path, desperation breaking through his voice. No, this burden is mine. Lissa looked at him, tears bright in the dim light. No, Aldrich, it was always ours. The spirit extended its gauntlet, spectral chains rattling from its arm. Blood bound the silence. Blood must bind it anew. Lissa stepped forward, but Aldrich caught her wrist. If you do this, you die, he said. If I do not, she answered, we all do. Her hand slipped free, and before he could stop her, she pressed her palm to the sarcophagus. The light surged, blinding. The spirit screamed, a sound of wind and sorrow entwined. The runes flared to life across the walls, and the ground trembled. Aldrich fell to his knees, shouting her name, but her voice was already fading into the storm of light. When the light dimmed, silence returned. The sarcophagus was sealed once more, its chains restored, glowing faintly with fresh runes. Lissa lay motionless beside it, her hair spread like ink upon the stone. Aldrich lifted her in his arms, face hollow, eyes glistening in torchlight. The horn on the altar was dark again, its runes quenched. Thalen stood back, helmet in hand, voice hoarse. She gave it peace. Aldrich rose slowly, cradling her. No, he said, voice low and breaking. She gave it a keeper. From somewhere deep within the crypt, a single note echoed, the last sigh of the horn, mournful and eternal. A gray stillness hung over the valley when Aldrich emerged from the crypt. The storm had passed, leaving the forest cloaked in mist and silence. The trees no longer moved. Their roots sunk deep, as though ashamed of their wrath. Thalen followed behind him, limping, his armor scorched and dented. In Aldrich's arms lay Lissa, her face serene, a faint golden sheen still clinging to her skin. He stepped into the pale light of morning. Smoke rose from the tower's wounds. Stones were split, battlements broken, yet it still stood. She did it, Thalen murmured. Aldrich gazed toward the forest's edge, voice hoarse. No, she became it. They buried her at the base of the tower, beneath an ancient pine whose roots had turned silver from the storm's strange fire. Aldrich laid her cloak over her body and placed the horn beside her, its runes now dim and cool. May the forest remember her kindly, Thalen said, crossing himself. Aldrich's voice broke as he replied. It already does. A soft breeze stirred through the trees, carrying the faint scent of herbs and rain. The pine's branches shivered, scattering golden needles across her grave. That evening, Thalen gathered his surviving men and prepared to return south. The captain clasped Aldrich's forearm firmly. The kingdom will want to know what happened here, he said. Aldrich looked beyond him to the forest, where faint green lights flickered between the trunks like watchful eyes. Tell them nothing, Aldrich said. Let them believe. The silence was mercy. Thalen headed, then nodded. As his men rode away, their banners fading into fog, Aldrich turned back toward the tower. For the first time in years, he felt its weight not as burden, but as vow. As night fell again, Aldrich climbed the tower's parapet one final time. The world was quiet, the air still. He gazed across the dark valley, now alive with faint luminescence from the forest below. Where destruction had reigned, saplings already grew, their leaves glinting like stars. He rested his hands upon the cold stone and whispered into the wind, "Keep watch with me, Lissa." The horn on the altar gave a soft hum, barely audible, like a heartbeat in the walls. He smiled faintly. So be it. When dawn returned, it found Kale Reach Spire reborn. Vines wound around its cracks, flowers grew from shattered stone, and the air hummed with quiet life. The horn lay silent on the altar, its glow gone, but its spirit awake. In the distance, a figure of mist and light moved among the trees, graceful, familiar. For a heartbeat, Aldrich saw Lissa's face there, smiling, before she vanished into the morning fog. He bowed his head. The wind carried a single soft note through the pines. Neither horn nor voice, but something between. The morning call had ended. Its watcher remained.